Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to skill session number 4. Inside of this training, we are going to be talking about reframing and question sequences and applying both of them. I know I started off the training differently. Snap. Pattern interrupt. Let's go ahead and hop right into it, ladies and gentlemen. Skills session number 4. Super pumped for us to go ahead and talk about this. Again, hey, at this point, you're probably a veteran with these skill sessions. You get the gist of what it is all about. Skill equals knowledge times reps, and reps equals action. And so we got to go ahead and make sure that we are applying the knowledge that we are learning so that we can actually acquire these skills. Going to be very, very important to do so. And so we are going to be going ahead and talking about these 2 skills inside of this skill session. Obviously, why skill sessions are important. Reason number 1, knowledge without practice is meaningless. Reason number 2, we learn best when we teach. Reason number 3, because you get a chance to be able to experience what it looks like on the other side as a student/client inside of a remote wellness practice, okay? Just another friendly reminder. I know at this point you're like, dude, 4 skill sessions. What is going on? I'm enjoying meeting other students, but dude, I got to keep recording these Zoom calls. What is going on here? I know. Sometimes when you do the same thing over and over and over again, it can start to feel like a chore, okay? But that is the point. When you do volume, when I say volume, you are doing mass quantity of repetition where something becomes unconscious for you. It becomes effortless for you to be able to do it in your sleep. And so right now, you might be looking at this and saying, man, sounds so pointless. This is maybe so pointless. But when you look back at it, I promise you, this is going to make the foundation of your confidence when you are actually dealing with clients and students of your own. And this is only going to get further solidified when you get into module 5 and module 6 with more and more practice. Because remember, I used to say this a lot in previous modules. You may not be ready now, but through this process, you will become ready. And so ultimately, keep on sticking with it, keep on pushing through, keep on doing things that you have never done before, because as long as you keep that up, I promise you, you will get outcomes that you have never had before, because this is how it works. When you do things that you've never done before, you get outcomes that you've never had before. The only thing is that there is a delay in between that. And so most people end up quitting because of the fact that they don't actually see the result immediately. And that's why you got to stick with something. And then there's a delay effect that happens when you start to see the fruit of all of your labor. So you got this. We believe in you. Let us know if you are having any negative thoughts, if you're having any down thoughts, if you're being pessimistic, you're really feeling like hey, my brain is out of it. Remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. We are here to support you. So keep on keeping us posted and letting us know if there is anything or when there is anything that we can support you with. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about this skill session here, skill session number 4. Like I said, we are going to be practicing reframing and transformational question sequences. But as you're going to see, we're actually only going to be prioritizing one of these skills here in a second. And you're going to see what I mean by that. And so reframing, let's go ahead and give a brief overview of reframing. Why is reframing important? Reframing allows yourself or your student to see their current situation from a different perspective, thereby helping open you or your student up to things like new perspectives, new possibilities, new ways to solve problems, new ways to make decisions, new learnings, all in ways that are more empowering and more serving to where you want to go and less disempowering and less not serving you, okay? And so without reframing, if the student is stuck in their current emotions or perspectives, they'll never be able to open up to see their situation in a different way. And so this was the graphic that we talked about inside of that training. There's an event, and then how our brains work is that we frame that event, okay? So, hey, because this happened, right? When this happens, if this happens, whatever that event is, or whatever that situation, circumstance, word, idea, or concept is, when or because this happens, right? Because I don't have a lot of money right now, therefore, this means, and now that is actually the frame that we apply to it, right? So when we all of a sudden we say, okay, this event means, there we go. That's the story. That's the frame right there. And then as a result of that, we have a certain action, we have a certain feeling, we have a certain behavior that happens as a result of the frame that we put on it. And so because my client is upset with me, that means that I have to go ahead and address it right now. And as a result of that, I feel stressed, right? So client is upset. Number 2, the frame that I'm putting is that I have to go ahead and handle that immediately. Okay, that's the frame that I'm giving meaning to. And the response is that I'm stressed out, right? Because I don't have a lot of money right now, the meaning of that is that I'm very stressed out. And my response is that, maybe I'm having difficulty with my relationship because I'm in scarcity mindset, whatever that might be. This is what the frame looks like, okay? Now, how do you actually do reframing? Well, we had an entire training on that. So make sure you do actually look back at that. We talked about the 7-step process process of how to actually create a reframe. So you want to make sure that you do look back at that. And then we do have the entire training for that as well, okay? The second skill that we talked about was transformational question sequences. We talked about how they allow you to get buy-in as well as help move the student forward. We talked about how to do transformational question sequences. We talked about the skeleton and the 5 parts and the 5 steps of that. Okay, so make sure you do look back at the training for that if you do have any questions or a refresher around that. Okay, so those are the skills that we are practicing here in skill session number 4. Okay, and these are skills that we use all the time, and so they are going to be very good for you to practice. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the actual instructions for this skill session. Obviously, number 1, you want to make sure that you have gone ahead and set up yourself for skill sessions. And so obviously at this point you probably have already because you've been completing the previous ones, but if you haven't, make sure you do look back at that training if you do need help with the setup. And just a reminder, you do want to make sure that you do partner with a different RWA student for the skill session, so that way you can get exposed to other students in the community, really start to a little bit of networking there going on, as well as experiencing the thought process of working with different people. Second point on here is important notes. I want to go ahead and mention this is that, hey, as soon as you start and get on Zoom, you don't have to necessarily start the skill session immediately, right? I would recommend for you guys to go ahead and maybe introduce each other, go ahead and catch up, because you guys are both students in this program, right? So, hey, what was your thoughts on that reframing training? That was a crazy training, right? And, just talk, build some rapport. Where are you from? What's your family situation like? What do you do? What's your day job? Do you have a day job? Just kind of catch up. And then once you're ready to go ahead and record, you hit record, and then you can go ahead and start the session from there. Okay, so those are the 2 points. Now what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and talk about the instructions for this skill session. Now, this skill session is going to be quite a bit different than what it is that we are used to in all of the other skill sessions, okay? Because the thing is, we've already practiced transformational question sequences in the other skill sessions, even though you didn't know the name of it and you didn't know what you were doing, okay? And so like we talked about in that training, you've already been doing that once or twice already. And so for that reason, inside of this specific skill session, we are not going to be practicing that skill. Instead, we're going to be using the time to go ahead and practice the skill of reframing, okay? And so what you are going to be doing inside of this skill session is that we are going to be practicing reframing by beginning to really start to exercise our brain to think of other perspectives, to think of other reframes to common disempowering frames that you are most likely to come across as an RWP, okay? So here in a second, I'm going to go ahead and show you a list of common disempowering frames, and you're going to get into the practice of reframing, okay? And so this skill session, unlike all of the previous skill sessions, is actually going to be more of like a work session with your partner. Instead of like, hey, there's a RWP coach and then there's a student and then we're going to switch roles. We're not doing that for this specific skill session. What we're doing is we're actually working together on reframing, and we're going to talk about exactly what that looks like. Now, why are we doing that? The reason we're doing that is because coming up with reframes on the spot when you are actually coaching a student is really an advanced skill. It's much easier in the beginning to come up with the disempowering frames list that students have, and then on your own time, when you can actually think and not have the pressure of having to perform or have to be able to talk to a student, then on your own time, you can be thinking of reframes that you can use for those common disempowering frames. And so when we practice reframing in this way, it's going to be much easier to be able to learn and practice this skill, okay? And so what's going to happen right now is I'm going to show you this list, and we're going to start to brainstorm different reframes. And the big thing you want to know about this is that when you're brainstorming, you want to let yourself have fun, okay? Some of these reframes can be funny, they can be goofy, they can be boring, they can be ridiculous. You don't have to worry about having the right or the perfect reframe, okay? And so this is really just a low pressure way to practice thinking of reframes, okay? And so you might wonder, hey, how am I going to know if I actually have a good reframe or not? And so the question to ask yourself is this reframe more empowering? Is it more serving the person to help them get to where they want to go? Or is it more disempowering? Because if the reframe that you come up with is not serving the person, if it's actually more disempowering, then you've actually taken a step backwards. And so as long as it's a reframe that is helping the person make progress and empowering them and serving them to get to where they want to go, then guess what? All good. You got a good reframe, okay? And so if it's more empowering, then you are on the right track. Awesome. So let's go ahead and talk about the actual instructions for this specific skill session. Okay, so there are going to be 6 things that you need to do before you actually go ahead and get on the Zoom session, before you get on the skill session with your partner. There are 6 things that you got to do, and you can see I have some of those highlighted as well. Let me walk you through them. Number 1, you're going to read through the common disempowering judgment frames in the tables below. I'm going to show you those here in a second. Okay. Number 2, you're going to spend some time before your skill session to prepare your own brainstorm of the examples provided. I'm going to go ahead and show you what that looks like as well. And then number 3, you're going to prepare ahead of time to make sure that you can see what is your most common disempowering frame of becoming an RWP, and then prepare ahead of time your most common disempowering frame in general. Now, before I come over here and talk about these instructions, let me show you what I just said or what I mean by this, because it sounds very conceptual. So I'm going to scroll down, and you're going to see that inside of the guide for this specific skill session, there are 2 tables, okay? So there's partner number 1 table, and it says table of common frames. And then there is partner number 2, table of common frames. They're pretty much exactly the same. And I'm going to go ahead and walk you through one by one what they look like. Okay. So table number 1 of common frames. You'll see the categories on here is that we have one list of disempowering judgment frames. Then we have reframe example. And then we have brainstorm your own reframes. Is this more empowering? And so you'll notice we went ahead and put some templates on here. The story I am telling myself right now is that because whatever the event, situation, idea, word is, that means whatever the frame is, right? So that's the disempowering judgment frame. And then the reframe example, we went ahead and put a couple there for you. Hey, what's the new meaning to this? What's the new angle for this, right? And then the brainstorm your own frames, this new story that I'm choosing to tell myself now is that because event, that means this, okay? So I'm not enough. You'll see right here, this is the common judgment frame, the common disempowering judgment frame. Here's an example. And then you and your partner are going to go ahead and brainstorm what are a couple different other reframes that are more empowering than this one, right? You don't want to just use the example. That's just the example. You want to come up with your own on here, okay? And so these 2 right here are the common ones, okay? These 2 are the common ones. And then these 2 right here for part number 1 is the partner number 1 is going to take time to think, okay, hey, before my skill session, I want to discuss what is my number 1 disempowering frame related to me becoming a remote wellness practitioner, for me to become a remote wellness coach, okay? What is the number 1 disempowering frame that I have around that? So you're going to spend time thinking about that. That's number 1. And then the second thing you're going to spend time thinking about, okay, is what is the most common disempowering frame that I have as an individual in general, other than just about becoming an RWP, right? So this one was about becoming an RWP specifically. And then this one is just in general, about my life in general, maybe about my personality in general, maybe about, my life situation in general, right? And so you're going to come up with that as well, okay? So you're going to think about that ahead of time. So your pre-work is that you are going to go ahead and brainstorm a couple different reframes on your own that are related to the common one. So this is 1. And this is 1, okay? So like 1A, 1B, if you want to call it, right? 1A, 1B, you want to kind of brainstorm what are some reframes about, hey, somebody says I'm not enough, or somebody says I'm behind, okay? So that's what you want to do before the skill session, kind of brainstorm. You want to have maybe 2, 3, 4, if you can come up with those, that's going to be very good, okay? And then the second thing you want to go ahead and do right here is you want to make sure you identify your individual, your personal fear, your personal disempowering frame, your personal disempowering story, your personal disempowering meaning related to you becoming an RWP coach, okay? And then the third thing you're going to prepare is going to be what is your most common disempowering frame in general, outside, other than just becoming an RWP coach, just in general in life as a whole, okay? So those are the 3 things that you are going to be preparing. Again, 1A, 1B, you're brainstorming what those reframes are going to be, okay? And then over here, you're identifying, you don't have to come up necessarily with the reframes, but you just want to be prepared of what the disempowering frame is going to be, okay? And so those are the 3 things that you are preparing. For partner number 2, it is going to be a little bit different, is that the common reframes are a little bit different. And so on here, we actually have 3 common reframes, okay? Now, because you don't actually know who's going to be partner number 1 and partner number 2, when you're preparing for this, you can just come up with like 2 for each of these, right? So you just come up with 2. Hey, what's a reframe that I can come up with for I'm too fat, or I failed, or I'm not where I should be? And so this would be 1A, 1B, 1C. And so really, let me go ahead and back up and make sure that this is understandable here, okay? So when you are preparing for this, you're going to be preparing 1A, 1B, and then you're going to come down here and you're going to do 1C, 1D, and 1E. Okay, I hope that makes sense. It might sound a little bit confusing. Let us know if you have any questions. But basically what you're doing is before you get on the skill session, all you're doing is you're preparing your mindset and coming up with 1 or 2 reframes yourself. And so that way the skill session can be faster, okay? And then this one right here is the same, which is your most common disempowering frame related to being an RWP and your most common disempowering frame related to in general in life as a whole, right? And so that's going to be the same. That's going to be just 2 and 3, okay? And so that is what it looks like in order to properly prepare for this. Let me scroll back up. If I didn't lose you in this, I hope it followed along with me. If you don't, if you have questions about this, go ahead and inside of the student community on the actual post for this skill session, go ahead and ask the question. You guys can go ahead and tag us and we can go ahead and answer any questions you have in regards to this, okay? And so that's what I'm talking about here when I talk about preparing these right here, 2, 3, and 4. That's what we're talking about there. Then number 5 on here is you want to review the reframing examples bank section in the reframing training, okay? So the reframing example bank section inside of this training, you want to go ahead and review that. All of that is going to be pre-work, okay? So you really want to spend some time, maybe, 20, 30 minutes before you actually get on the skill session. So that way, with the limited time that you have with your partner, it's not like you guys are just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You're actually able to use the time properly, okay? So that's the pre-work and obviously partnering with just one other student, okay? Now, let's actually get into what happens when you start the actual skill session. So what's going to happen is that partner number 1 is going to start recording. So between yourselves, just choose, hey, somebody's going to be partner number 1 and somebody's going to be partner number 2. You're going to meet on the Zoom link for partner number 1 first. And then whoever Zoom link it is going to be responsible for the recording, okay? And then also whoever Zoom link it is, they are going to set a timer for 30 minutes, okay? So for this skill session, it's going to be 30 minutes, 30 minutes, okay? Again, that's very important so that way you can be respectful of the other person's time, okay? Then what you are going to do, and this is kind of like the bulk and this is what it looks like, what you are doing inside of those 30 minutes, is you're going to go through partner number 1 table. And so partner number 1 begins by reading the first common judgment in the left column. Partner number 2 is going to read the example out loud in the middle column. And then you're going to have a brief 1 to 2 minute discussion of the common judgment and what it looks like, okay? And then you're going to start to brainstorm and brain dump your own reframes together. So you're going to go back and forth, okay? You're going to go back and forth and you don't have to worry about them being good or not. And you're just going to out loud ask each other questions like, hey, what could be the opposite of this perspective? What if this other thing was true? Is it possible that this could be true instead? How might the opposite of this judgment actually be true? How might it actually have value in my life if it's the opposite of this reframe, right? What unique perspective would the opposite of this allow into my life? Why might this new perspective be more helpful in my life than the current frame, right? And so you're just going to go ahead and brainstorm for each of the different frames that are on there. So let me go ahead and walk you through this down here, okay? So you went ahead and prepared and you did your, 1 or 2 reframes on here, 1 or 2 reframes on here. And so for these common ones, you're going to go ahead and say, cool, let's go ahead and answer back and forth. I'm not enough. What could be a reframe on this? Let's go back and forth. Now, here's the cool thing. Because you've done your preparation, this is going to go a lot quicker because each of you already has 1 or 2 reframes for these. And so then when you actually get to the one that the partner needs help with, the one that they struggle with the most, you can spend more of the 30 minutes helping each other and helping each other come up with reframes specifically about, hey, this is my biggest disempowering frame about being an RWP, and this is my biggest disempowering frame in life as a whole. And so that way you guys can go ahead and spend more of your 30 minutes helping each other and tackling that. And so when you were doing the first one on the first person Zoom link, it's going to be going through partner number 1. Okay, so that is the instructions for that part on there. Now, biggest thing on here, right? After you've brain dumped together 3 or 5 frames, you want to step back and you want to discuss together if your reframes, the ones that you've brainstormed, are actually more empowering or disempowering, right? Are they actually more helpful? Are they not actually helpful? And how do you know if they are good frames or not? And like we've already talked about, all you got to do is say, hey, is it more empowering or is it more disempowering, right? And so sometimes a powerful reframe doesn't actually stick with a student. And so that's why you sometimes have to have multiple of them. So that way you can try different ones. Okay. So biggest thing on here is do not judge yourself or your partner on the ability to generate more empowering reframes. It's just about brain dumping. It's not about judging. It's not about saying, oh, that doesn't work. That doesn't sound good. No, just keep on dumping, brainstorming, brain dumping. And then more and more good ones are going to continue to come. And then on top of that, what what you're doing is you're really celebrating. Look at how many different ways that you can take the same event, the same situation, the same idea, the same concept, and reframe it in so many different ways, right? And so you're going to work through as many of the judgments or the disempowering frames, but you are going to spend less time on the common ones, all right? There's 2 or 3 common examples down there, and you really want to go ahead and prioritize the 30 minutes that you have. And partner number 1 is bringing to the table and saying, hey, this is the biggest disempowering frame that I have around becoming an RWP coach. And then that way you guys can work together on tackling partner number 1's disempowering frame about being an RWP coach, as well as helping them and helping partner number 1 go through their biggest disempowering frame in life in general. Awesome. So that is the instructions of what is going to happen with partner number 1. And then once that 30-minute timer goes off, or when you guys are finished going through the reframes, this one's going to be probably going up until the timer goes off. Then you're going to switch Zoom links, and now it's going to be partner number 2's turn. And partner number 2 is going to be responsible for the recording. Partner number 2 is going to set the timer for 30 minutes. And then you're going to go through the exact same steps that you just went through with partner number 1. You're going to go through those exact same steps with partner number 2 and partner number 2's table. So you are going to notice that the common examples are slightly different for partner number 2, but you guys are going to be working on them together. But like I said, if you've already prepared your 2 reframes for each one, then it's going to go by much, much quicker for the common ones. And then you can spend more time on helping partner number 2 through their disempowering frame about being an RWP coach, as well as their disempowering frame for life as a whole. Beautiful. So that is the instructions for skill session number 4. Like I said, it is quite a bit different than what we are used to. It is more of a work session that you guys are working jointly together. The biggest thing on here that I'm going to say is that it's very important to make sure that you do your pre-work, both of you. And maybe that's even something that you ask inside of the messenger conversation and say, hey, did you do the pre-work? Did you come up with your 2 reframes for all of the common ones? Did you come up with your, did you already choose your disempowering frame for being an RWP coach? Did you already choose the disempowering frame for life in general that we can go ahead and work through? That's going to be very important, so that way you're not wasting time on the skill session and you guys can get into it. Okay, so again, remember, 1 or 2 here, 1 or 2 here, right? You want to come up and prepare for that. You want to have your disempowering frame here done. You want to have your disempowering frame here done, and then you want to have, regardless if you are partner number 1 or partner number 2, you want to have your 1 or 2 here, 1 or 2 here, 1 or 2 here, right? And so all together, you're preparing 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 reframes. And then you're making sure that you have your disempowering frame related to becoming an RWP and your disempowering frame for life in general. I said that like a gazillion times in different ways. I hope that makes sense. Again, let us know if you have any questions. More than happy to go ahead and help you with that. Okay, so just a quick reminder, we are practicing these skills in isolation. So the more practice you get with reframes, it is going to be easier and better for you as a skill set in your toolbox as an amazing coach. And eventually it's going to become effortless for you to be able to use reframes. Okay, so as we close out these instructions for skill session number 4, remember, you are going to do great. I really want to go ahead and commend you for willing to be able to try this and being open to trying this. And so this is why practice is here, because practice makes progress. And so that way you can get all of your nerves out, you can get all of your stumbling out, you can get all of your practice out. And I know you are absolutely going to crush this. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about your action steps for this specific training. As always, these are going to be the action steps for the skill sessions. Make sure that you do comment your availability. Make sure that you do go ahead and reply to another student's availability. Make sure that you do go ahead and add them as a friend, and then go ahead and start a DM conversation with them. Be professional. Make sure you note time zone differences. Then you conduct your skill session. Make sure you upload it to YouTube unlisted, and then reply back to your original comment with the template that is provided there. Tag your fellow partner and your student, and then go ahead and let us know what your thoughts around the skill session were. Okay, so super pumped and super excited to see all of the reframes that you guys come up with, as well as, remember, you guys are helping each other inside of the skill session. It's a very, very powerful one, because you can get an outside's perspective on being vulnerable with somebody and somebody else helping you actually come up with reframes to some of the biggest things that you struggle with in your life, as well as the biggest things that you struggle with in maybe your confidence of becoming a remote wellness practitioner. So this one's a very, very awesome one. And guess what? This is actually the last skill session in Module 4. So hooray to you. You did phenomenal. I'm super pumped for you to go ahead and get this done. This is Coach Yasin checking out. Super excited to see your guys' skill sessions inside of the student community. And I will catch you inside of the next training.